Hi everyone, it's Anne. Welcome to my channel, Head Trip Creations, where I create mixed media portrait art. I had so much fun doing this gal. I started with a simple ink sketch and then progressed using tons of wet media, daring techniques that even scared me. So I can't wait to show you how I did it. The video will start now. Enjoy. So here on 140-pound watercolor paper, I'm doing a very loose sketch with a black gel pen, which is highly water reactive. And what I was thinking of doing was shading in the left side of her face. I didn't know at this point that I was going to do a complete hair sweep. So I cross hatch, I go over the same lines several times to build up the ink so that it really reacts when I add the water. But you can see how I'm just adding all these scratchy lines to the left side of her face and going over the same line several times to build it up. And then when I hit it with the water, it reacts. So at first it goes on a little purple and then it dries gray. So now what I want to do is lay down the acrylic ink. So first I added water to the surface and it wasn't pooling enough, so I started spraying. And I love what happened to her face, her complexion. It got very smoky and there were natural highlights. I never had to use any quote unquote, foundation. This is cold wax from a regular candlestick. I'm blocking out areas so that when I use that bottle, which is 80%-ish rubbing alcohol and 25%-ish black acrylic ink, so I make my own alcohol ink. This is how I colored throughout the piece. Every now and again I use a brush, but for the most part I use the bottles. So whether it's the acrylic ink or it's the alcohol ink that I made, both in black and in brown. So using a watercolor brush with a little bit of the DIY ink that I make, I am going over her features. The gel ink in the pen is reacting. So here I'm just doing some contouring. And she's almost looking, I don't know, like a movie star from like the 1940s or 50s. She almost looks like she would be blonde. So this is the acrylic ink. This is the start of that hair sweep. And I'm actually using it as kind of like my palette to dip a detail brush, a rigger, I think a rigger paintbrush into it, just to go over her features very lightly. Here I'm laying down some old book paper, which ends up getting a little dirty, and I removed it. So what I was saying before about how there were highlights, I took advantage of that and went over it with white chalk. That was oil pastel for her pupil. And now I'm adding white chalk and then with a mop brush, which is my favorite new tool, just dusting it. And this is more pastel. It's kind of like a reddish brown, like a rusty reddish brown. I don't know what the color is exactly. And then I end up moving this piece. And now what's interesting is I'm adding my ink that I made, but when I poured it over the surface that had the pastel, it completely reacts differently. It's kind of almost, I don't know, like syrupy. Definitely more muddy, but that's okay. I like texture. So I'm using the stick to move the paint around. Well, we'll call it paint. It's alcohol and acrylic paint with the pastels. And now I am using the detail brush. I'm using, you can see the pastel stick, the chalk pastel. I'm actually wetting it and painting with it. It's a lot more subtle than using acrylic paint. Working on the nose. I'm always working on the noses. I've gotten a lot better at them. Here, that's matte gel medium, laying down some collage papers. I just wanted to brighten that area, but I didn't want color. So black and white, that's tissue paper. This is the brown alcohol ink that I make. This is an oil pastel stick, and then I rubbed it away. Wasn't sure what I was doing. That's chalk pastel in the same color. So I'm just working this whole area. I really wasn't sure what direction she was, what pose she was in. Here I'm just adding some marks. That was a very daring move. That was the acrylic ink for her hair sweep. If it would have gone the other direction or down her chest, but if it would have hit her face, it would have been upsetting. But you got to take chances. Those dots, they ended up getting covered up. I'm navigating at this point. I'm not really sure if she's looking over her shoulder. She kind of looks like she's turning around like that's her back. But she's not an owl, so she can't turn her head that much. So here what I'm doing is I lightened her chest to kind of start bringing her forward. It was too dark. And now that's going to be what ends up being a fur collar of a jacket. So it's amazing to watch how her position really shifts at this point. If I used reference, I probably would have been able to get there from the beginning, but when you wing it, you don't know what you're doing. It's a lot more fun, but there's a lot more steps to it. And it's a hit and miss. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. I got it right this time. It's a little hair wisp. This is soft chalk pastels, so vibrant. So that would be probably the rest of her jacket, and this is the collar. So this is more of the alcohol ink that I make. So you could see I'm really not using brushes. I'm using the acrylic ink, the alcohol ink, the pastels. Just adding pops of color to that black and white. Not too much where it competes with her. So I'm just adding more of that reddish rusty brown to her collar, to her eyes, her nose, a little bit of lipstick. I love those whiskey lips. So here I'm just using the gel pen to define her eyebrows. And then the eye that's under the hair, I do just a hint of the eyebrow and the eye. Here I'm shading with a pencil, which is graphite, and when you rub it, it shades. As long as you use the side of the pencil, you won't get too much of that shine. But if you use the tip, you'll get a lot of shine from the graphite. It doesn't look like much is happening there, but once it's down and you rub it, whether with a cotton swab or your fingertip, which is what I did, it really shades. You'll see what happens with the eye, right? Not this one, the other one, to illustrate my point. You can see just around where the hair is, that cast shadow. So whenever you have something like that, the hair, you want to cast a shadow right there. See how dark it got? Just rubbing it. So now I'm just adding more color to her furry collar. And then I'm going to go over it with the alcohol ink. So you think like, why did you do that? Why did you bother adding the pastel if you're going to add the black alcohol ink? It's because it kind of blends and it mixes and it skips and you kind of see the color underneath and it changes the texture. So here I'm brightening up her chest, her neck and her chest, so that it blends better with her face. It was too dark. See, in the beginning, I wasn't sure what position she was in. I was coloring her neck and area black because I was going to do some kind of, details, pattern. But now that it's her chest and her neck, and I know that, I needed to make it the same color as her face. So, as I mentioned, I'm pouring the black alcohol ink over the pastel, and you could see the pastel through it, which is more interesting than if I just added the black alcohol ink or just the pastel. I have a silicone mat that is the same size as my desk, so I don't care what falls on it. It protects my desk 100%. So I'm just making sure that there's no puddles underneath because the paper will get too wet. I dry it a lot off camera. So here I'm using a pastel pencil to shade under her chin, and then I use a cotton swab to blend it. And dry the back of it as well. And then later off camera, I'll spray it with fixative because there's a lot of pastel. And I'll spray it outside because that stuff that I use is, it's really toxic. So here I'm using the soft pastels again. I'm not rubbing it in too much because I don't want to lose the vibrancy. And then, like I said, I'll fix it with the fixative spray. So I'm adding it to her lips. But what I love about that is like it's almost like her hair, or like if her hair was like in a certain style and resting on the fur collar. She's starting to look very sultry, very sophisticated. So brightening her chest. And now what I'm doing with a white chalk pastel stick, I'm adding the suggestion of highlights in her hair. Because that area is so dark, you really can't tell where her hair starts or ends. So this shows that she has wavy hair and there's highlights. And I go into it with the sponge later. It's almost done. We're in the home stretch. You can see how I'm holding the pencil at the end, so it's very, very loose. I'm not applying any pressure at all. And now the fun part. This is probably my favorite part. Adding little hairs, like 1,000 little hairs to her collar, and it almost looks like cashmere. So they're going in a million different directions. They're crossing over each other, but the trick is to keep them all light and the same length for the most part. If I would have made them too long, it wouldn't have looked right. So with the black, there's some brown in there too. This is just a colored pencil. It's kind of like a gold, maybe like an ochre. I have no idea what color it is. I have a big box of old Crayola colored pencils and other craft pencils. I just grab whatever color I need. Here I'm just rubbing her hair, adding a little bit of color to it. And she is done. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was really detailed, so I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I hope you enjoyed it half as much as I did. If you have any questions about my process, leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you. And if you're new to my channel and you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you will. Until the next video, take care. I'll see you soon.